Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member for holding this hearing, and I want to thank our panelists for your good work. I recognize you from previous hearings, and thank you again. This was a difficult challenge from the very beginning, and I just want to take us back to the Trump administration's initial response. So back in 2019 and 2020, you know, Mr. Trump on January 24th, 2020, the day the second coronavirus case was confirmed in the United States, President Trump tweeted and again reiterated that, quote, China's been working very hard to contain the coronavirus. It will all work out. I want to thank President Xi. And then went on to say that the coronavirus would be over by Easter. Based on what we know now, did those statements by the President of the United States induce the sense of urgency that the American people should have harbored with respect to this pandemic, Mr. Dodaro?
I think that the actions that the Congress take showed the sense of urgency in passing the CARES Act back in March 2020 on a bipartisan basis. And I think that sent the right signal and the sense of urgency that needed to be addressed to those issues.
You're exceedingly diplomatic as always.
That's
Mr.
why
Horowitz.
I'm still here.
Mr. Horowitz, and Mr. Smith, you want to take a crack at that question?
Not particularly.
Well, let me just say that let me just get down into the details a little bit here. Unless Mr. Smith, you'd like to add, no? Okay. I'm not sure of the division of labor within your agencies, but are any of you familiar with the Yellow Corporation during your investigations? No.
Sorry, which corporation?
Yellow Corporation. It was a trucking company, apparently, with political connections to the Trump administration. Are you familiar with that?
I think that's the one that there was a loan given to out of one of the programs, and I think we
Correct.
we
Let me
looked,
refresh. Let me try to
we
refresh.
looked at that issue.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Let
we
me
looked
just-
at that.
All right, thank you. Let me try to refresh your recollection. So the Select Committee, Subcommittee report confirmed that a $700 million loan to this trucking company that was politically connected to the Trump administration was given this $700 million loan, and Trump administration political appointees overruled Defense Department officials in that case to actually certify the company as a, quote, critical to maintaining national security, and therefore eligible for the loan. The company then went on to use the loan for long-term capital investments in violation of the CARES Act requirement. I was just curious if, I know you're familiar with it, do you have anything else you could add to that fact pattern?
I'd be happy to provide our results for the record. I can't remember offhand, and I don't want to misstate.
Okay, all right. Well, we could take that at a later time. What are the lessons learned based on how the Trump administration responded initially to the pandemic?
Number one, I think there should have been more preparedness on the part of the agencies to prevent fraud. You know, Congress passed legislation in 2016 based on GAO's advice on how to prevent fraud in the first place. Part of this is there's a cultural problem. In most cases, the fraud issues, people think of the inspector generals and think of the Secret Service and GAO, but you got to prevent it in the first place. But the agencies were slow to implement it.
Yeah.
The OMB was supposed to create a working group to develop this. We issued a report in 2019, said the working group had never met and they needed to take more actions, number one. Number two, I think the other lesson learned for the Congress is to be careful about putting provisions in the legislation that make programs more susceptible to fraud, allowing, for example, self-certifications, not using tax transcripts for others. So I think there's legislation there as well. Thirdly, the agencies that had not addressed improper payment problems. So they knew they had payment problems, and not addressing open GAO and IG recommendations make them less prepared. So there's a lot of lessons, and my legislative solutions to these address some of these lessons learned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, and I yield back.